Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 126. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Saturday, Steelers Nation. A happy day 3 of the NFL Draft, the final day upcoming. Dave and I are recording this podcast Saturday morning in hopes to get it out before noon starts off the final day, rounds 4 through 7 in Pittsburgh. So the Steelers making 4 selections yesterday, Dave. Germie Bernard, Drew Allar, Daylen Everette, and Jennings Dunker trading up for Bernard and Dunker. So a busy day 2 for the Steelers. Dave, how you doing?
All right. Good morning. What day is it? It feels like a Sunday, but it's a Saturday. It's that long Saturday of the draft. Things will move a lot faster, obviously, on this last day. And I think the Steelers have, 5 picks after all the trades right now. We'll see if they make any more trades on Saturday. And 3 of those picks are in the 7th round. And then we obviously have the wrap-up press conference from Mike McCarthy and Omar Khan. And then we'll start sorting this thing out kind of more a little bit deeper going into some of these guys. But I think we got 4 interesting players to discuss that became Steelers on Friday night. Do we not?
We do. We have nothing but time to talk about these guys in the days and weeks to come. But let's start with a quick recap. We'll try to go through these in fairly rapid fashion just to get this podcast out. But Pittsburgh in the 2nd round, wasting no time, Dave. We thought Pittsburgh was going to make a trade up for a wide receiver, not sit on their hands, and potentially lose out on a candidate, especially after what happened on night 1. That's exactly what happened. Pittsburgh trading up 6 spots from 53 to 47, a deal with the Indianapolis Colts, where Pittsburgh gave up a 4th round pick to select Alabama wide receiver Germie Bernard. So first of all, congratulations are in order to you, Dave, for predicting Germie Bernard in the 2nd round of your Steelers mock draft. And he's a really good scheme fit, a guy who came in for a visit, guy that obviously was on Pittsburgh's radar pretty overtly, and now he is a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, I think let's start with the actual trade in and of itself. I think I've read a couple of different inputs on the different charts that people use, and some people have their own design charts over the years. Some of the nerds, have really kind of tried to define that. Seems like it was a great, as far as trades go, with draft picks and all. It seems like the Steelers did a great job as far as point value and all like that. I think probably one of the better point value trades in this year's draft, from what I'm understanding. We'll obviously see how it plays out from there. We both had a pretty good sense, I think, going into yesterday about thinking that, okay, this team obviously didn't make a move in the 1st round there. And one of the things I said multiple times ahead of this draft was, man, especially when it comes to this draft class overall, and with the Steelers having 12 picks in this draft originally, certainly would have wanted to see them trade up in the first couple of rounds to go get a guy that they want. And it feels like that's exactly what happened. It was, to me, it was pretty easy to connect the dots to a few of these wide receivers that the Steelers could have interest in the first couple of rounds of this draft. And Germie Bernard, obviously, in that group, came in for a pre-draft visit. To me, also, and as I've stated, I think based on what Mike McCarthy has said throughout the pre-draft process, with what he's looking for in wide receivers and what Germie Bernard is and has been at Alabama. It made it a pretty logical fit overall. I don't think this is a guy that look. Let's start first and foremost. This class overall, right, is just not great. Now there are positions within this class position groups like the safety and the off the ball linebacker groups that are much better than they have been in the past. But I think as a whole, this draft class, is just not a high quality overall. So when it comes to a guy like Bernard, when you look at the wide receiver class, I think he slotted and went exactly where a lot of people thought he might go in the second round. I think in other years, you're probably going to be around later with him, but I mean, you deal with what you deal with, with the class that you can, the class is what the class is, and second rounders this year might be third or fourth rounders in other years, or maybe even potential a little bit higher than that in other years. There, he's not, to me, he's not ever going to be that 90 or 100 catch guy in the NFL. You'll hear a lot of people kind of compare him, I think, to Deebo Samuel with what he can do. I think he's a more athletic version of that. We talked a lot the other day about the ability to catch the deeper balls. Obviously, can play inside and outside. That's something that Mike McCarthy's talked a lot about. Has a lot of experience in doing that. Great kid. I mean, just a great character kid, especially when it comes to the wide receivers. There's not a lot to not like when it comes to him. Physical. He's willing to do the dirty work and block. I think he needs a little bit of refinement in that area, but he definitely has the willingness to help out the blocking game. As far as contested catches goes, and I wrote this in the write-up on him in my mock draft, certainly not the most contested catch guy in this class, and really far from it. Now, with that said, he had some nice contested catches in college. It's just not the percentage of, I don't even think anywhere close to 50% contested catch rate. So, going to have to try to work on making more contested catches at the NFL level, but I think he can run the full route tree. Not going to be a guy that wins just flat out 9 route deep over the top, but he can get deep on people, and obviously made his share of down the field catches more than 15 yards past the line of scrimmage here. I think with what the Steelers already have on their roster in Pittman and Metcalf, and what Mike McCarthy has said that he's looking for in this class, and with the experience that Germie Bernard has, who he's willing to work all areas of the fields, good after the catch, breaking tackles as well too. For what this roster is right now, I think he's the perfect fit. So I think he's a guy that can give you 60 to 70 catches during the season. Can become a very I'd like the chance to become a good number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, and I would expect him to be able to cut his teeth as a rookie as a number 3 in this offense, and should be able to hit the field fairly quickly.
When Mike McCarthy talked about what he's looking for in a receiver before the draft, he really was describing, I think, a couple people in particular. Omar Cooper Jr. would have fit that bill round 1, and Germie Bernard would have fit that bill round 2 as somebody versatile, smart, tough, can be a movable piece around an offense, and Bernard certainly is that. I think he was a better scheme fit than, say, a Denzel Boston, who's an outside guy, a little more linear, downfield, limited in where he wins. I think Bernard is a little more varied. Now, I think this is more about a higher floor than a higher ceiling with Germie Bernard. I don't think, as you said, he's going to be this number 1 transform into this dominant type of receiver, but right. Pittsburgh's current roster does not need him to be that. The long-term outlook, we'll see what the upside truly is, but as a number 3, as a really good slot receiver, as a guy that can and certainly will move around. I mean, they really ran this offense this past game through Bernard. You're getting him in the backfield. You're getting him on a lot of the designed RPOs and, bubble screens and some wildcat, as you said. So, I mean, for Alabama to say, we're going to run our offense through this guy says a lot about what they thought about Germie Bernard. He was productive. He led them in receptions and receiving yards in 25, despite having a really talented receiver like Ryan Williams. And, if Ty Simpson was a little more consistent, there were some just air balls Bernard's way that would have boosted his stats all the more. So I think it's a good fit. I think Pittsburgh got good value here. As you said, the trade, giving up just a 4th-round pick. There was a 7th-round pick swap too, 12 selections or so. Doesn't really matter there. Is just fine. And as you said, Dave, yesterday, go up and get your guy. Don't sit. Don't wait for someone to take him. Don't get sniped again. And so, I'm all about this.
Look, did Mekhi Lemon deserve to go where he went? Yes, absolutely. But I think scheme fit, and obviously when you add in other aspects, and Germie Bernard I think is a little bit bigger than Mekhi Lemon as well too. Lemon played more in the slot. I'm obviously not saying that they shouldn't have traded up potentially for Mekhi Lemon, but it was a little bit of a head scratcher, that they were going after Lemon based on the things that Mike McCarthy has said: bigger wide receiver, more inside outside capable. Not that Lemon's not an outside guy, but he played a lot in the slot and all like that. And maybe we'll look. Who knows? We'll obviously get a better handle on this draft class. A couple of years from now. I'm not going to say that Bernard's going to be better. Statistical and all player than Mekhi Lemon, but I don't know. Maybe we'll look back on this and say, well, maybe it was a good thing that they he ended up getting snaked. Mekhi Lemon ended up getting snaked away from them there. I just think, and I said this several times, and look, Boston went ahead of him. I think a lot of people kind of expected that. But I did say, though, I think that I thought that Bernard was a better fit for what it seemed like Mike McCarthy was looking for than Boston. So take that for, if we take Mike McCarthy for what he had said throughout the pre-draft process here, and based on what I saw on tape from those two players, that's how I came to that conclusion. Now, had they had the chance, had Boston been in range at that spot to go up and get, do they likely go up and get Boston? Probably in that situation. But I think when people start getting deeper into Bernard's film, they're going to say, what do they really have here? I think you just once again got to look at the class, what was there, and what probably best fits this roster right now. And look, we could see this team in 2027, especially depending on how these multiple quarterbacks and all work out in Pittsburgh, and how the class of quarterback class. There might be a lot of teams rushing for the quarterback line next year, and maybe the Steelers are in line to get one of the top wide receivers next year. And
well, they might be in that quarterback line too.
Right, exactly. But I'm just
sure.
So what I'm saying is here that drafting Germie Bernard this year in the 2nd round, and then especially with DK Metcalf and Pittman aging all like that, this does not prevent the team from taking another high round shot at a more legitimate wide receiver 1 next year. So I think he fits for what this team can use right now in 2026, and I think Germie Bernard is going to be around the league for quite a while as a number 2, number 3 type guy, and a reliable one at that.
Yeah, there's certainly a theme of size, physical toughness that Pittsburgh is drafting, I think, throughout a lot of their draft picks that they've made so far. And so there's a clear theme, regardless of position or what your role is going to be. They're looking for those baseline traits. He's a guy that has a lot of experience, 3-year starter, 22 years old. So good place on the age with the pretty good youth and a lot of experience. And he's been a leader in that room. They called him, apparently in our scouting report, Uncle Germ, as Alabama teammates did, because of his professionalism and veteran leadership and just approach to the game. And if you're going to work with Aaron Rodgers, assuming he comes back, who doesn't typically play well with rookies, then you want someone who's smart and savvy and more mature than your typical rookie. And it seems like Bernard is. That's going to give him a better chance to make an impact in year 1, where those young receivers typically tend to struggle playing with Rodgers. So there are some concerning metrics with Bernard. He's not, this juiced up, crazy athlete. He ran a respectable 4.48 40. The other testing was pretty marginal. We've done some research. Our Clayton Eckert pulled stats against man coverage, and Bernard was, I think, maybe bottom 10 in the 30 or so receivers we looked at, which, I've talked about so much about beating man coverage. Now that's just one stat, and I think he does run good routes. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And so, how much does that man coverage stat alone tell you about his route running ability to beat man to man? I looked at the yards per route run during the pre-draft process because that's such an important stat for me, given how poor Pittsburgh was last year, and he ranked really poorly on that list. But, was that partially because of the manufactured touches, which tends to bring down your number a little bit? Maybe that's one reason why. So there are some of the metrics that give you some pause there, but I think Bernard's a good player where I think, I don't want to call anyone safe because I think that's such a
Right.
foolish word when it comes to the NFL draft, but I do think the floor is pretty high, even if the ceiling isn't that much higher.
When it comes to this, once again, when it comes to this specific draft class at the wide receiver position, and when they got him, and the fit that he at least on paper and tape seems to be with the other two top wide receivers in Pittsburgh at this time, I think I think it's a match made in heavy. I think it's a good pick from all those things all together. Now, once again, if this was a better wide receiver draft class, are we talking more about Germie Bernard in the third round? Yeah, possibly. But someone who really likes this pick that I was interested to hear from was Steve Smith loves it, and for whatever that's worth, on the NFL Network, he really likes Germie Bernard's game. And, you'll see once again a lot of comps out there. I think to Deebo Samuel, I think he's, more refined guy overall, than and put together just a little slightly different than Deebo Samuel.
He's small. He's not as
Yeah,
muscular and not as
right.
powerful, I don't think, as Debo.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I think he gives you more route running
Mhm.
chops, than a guy maybe like Debo does and all. And look, he Jeremy Bernard broke his share of tackles, and he's a hard guy to bring down to the ground as well too. I'd like to see him not round off some of these routes as much, and like to see him kind of get in and out of the breaks. I think it's a little bit of wasted steps and action within that. And then once again, I'd like to see him, the contested catch ability will be something to watch as he gets into the NFL. Did catches if anything's close to him, he's going to catch it, because not a lot of drops in his tape as well too. So yeah, I think this was a match, and obviously I predicted that potentially this would happen in the second round, and I think he even said in the write up that might have to trade up a little ways to get him, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you nailed it. So kudos to you on that. So, the test will be about, can Pittsburgh still beat man coverage when they face some of those more man heavy teams? Cleveland, you saw Houston in the wild card loss last year, and I don't know if Bernard was the perfect prospect for that, but I think he certainly was just going to give you something more than what you had. And Pittman's a savvy route runner, even though he's not an explosive route runner, and hopefully a more creative scheme under Mike McCarthy can just naturally get these guys open, put defenders in conflict more than Pittsburgh has in the past. And Bernard will block too. And I don't know if that's going to be as valuable or as important under Mike McCarthy than it was Arthur Smith. I'm sure they value it, but Arthur Smith was all about that life, about receivers who block, and Bernard certainly will get after it.
Yeah, and you hope, like McCarthy said, yeah, the receiver that they did settle on, whoever that was, they hope to be able to move him around. He's got enough experience and moved around enough in Alabama. Seems to be a smart enough kid, and we'll obviously see if he can stay healthy throughout the offseason and participate to help ease the learning of the offense and where he needs to line up, and in other words, not be kind of a all right, we're going to take it easy on, they should be able to feed him pretty fast, I guess, is what I'm
Mhm.
getting at there. And hopefully he is a guy that during his rookie season that they are able to schematically move around all three of those wide receivers to take advantage of the best matchup. And I think that's going to be key for this offense with the wide receivers that they seemingly have, and obviously, anticipating Aaron Rodgers coming back.
Yeah, with that versatility, you create matchups. You keep defenses on their toes. You could take advantage of weaknesses. You make defenses cover everyone and everything, which puts more on their plate, which increases their practice time and just a larger menu for them to handle. Those are all things Mike McCarthy talked about before the draft. And Bernard was the best receiver, the most versatile receiver on the board when Pittsburgh picked. And so this one made a lot of sense. And then that debate about Denzel Boston versus Germie Bernard, we'll get a good look at Denzel Boston, his career. Now in Cleveland, we'll see him twice per season.
Mm-hmm. They took another receiver too, didn't they? Concepcion?
Yeah, Concepcion was in the first round. They get Boston. We don't like to say it too much around here, but Cleveland's having a good draft.
Yeah. Yep, they are.
All right, Dave, let's go to round 3 and Pittsburgh taking Penn State quarterback Drew Allar. And I'm kicking myself for not putting that in my mock draft because it felt like it was a good chance they would take that mid-round quarterback. So he was the 4th quarterback selected behind, of course, Mendoza and Simpson in round 1. Carson Beck went to the Arizona Cardinals in round 3. And now Drew Allar will call Pittsburgh home in the NFL. So we know they wanted that AFC North type of quarterback that was big and strong and tough and played in the elements, and Drew Allar checking all of those boxes. The physical talent is undeniable, the live arm, the overall build. The question is just consistency and mechanics and finding, Allar even admitted just needed to be more consistent at the NFL level. He'll get good coaching from Tom Arth and from Mike McCarthy. There's upside here, but a big project along the way. So your thoughts, Dave?
My thoughts are along the lines of you. I'm kicking myself because I thought Allar would go ahead of Beck. I would have put Allar, although both of them I think went a little bit earlier than maybe what I thought overall, but I thought Allar would go before Beck. And if somebody would have guaranteed me that Beck was going to go as early as he did, then I would have put Allar probably in the spot where I put Beck in my mock draft. My analysis starts with this. I'm glad the pick wasn't Beck. I think
that's one way to look at it.
I think I said that in my write-up and when we went through our mock drafts as well too. Boy, I sure hope I get the Beck pick wrong. You won't hear that out of my mouth too many times when it comes to my final mock drafts. If given, if you would have told me, the Steelers will have one we're automatically going to draft one of those 4 quarterbacks that they had in for pre-draft visits. And you made me choose which one I hope that they got. I still would have probably taken none of them, but Allar would have been my choice. I think he has the best traits of the group. Definitely has the arm strength. Definitely, I think when you probably look at the 4 that they had in, is the most AFC North quarterback of the bunch. So I guess that's a backhanded way of saying
I think you're praising him.
I think that Allar of the 4 that they brought in was the best choice for them to make, being as how they seem dead set on drafting a quarterback. Now, we're gonna find out what kind of quarterback whisperer Mike McCarthy really is now at this point, because here we are with 2 very young quarterbacks on the roster, and Will Howard and Drew Allar, and neither one of them have played an NFL snap to date, obviously. So you got that aspect of it. Allar, all he had to do is not worry about getting pushed, not moving off his spot, he's a lot better. Where problems begin happening with him is getting off of getting pushed off his spot. Very, very remember though, this was a kid that's why it's dangerous with these quarterback classes, right? What was it, over a year ago that people saying this guy's going to be a 1st round draft pick and the top of the class, and 1st rounder for sure. And then last season happened. Just very, very inconsistent. I thought it was interesting to hear Tom Arth talk about Allar. Tried to recruit him when Arth was at Akron. There, has known him for quite a while. What did he say? All the way back to like 13 or 14, something like that.
Yeah, and for those wondering, they're in the same area. He's from
Right.
St. Ignatius, Ohio. Allar's from Ohio, so they're all in the same waters over there.
All right, so they already had and I don't think did we know that going in about Arth and Aller and the connection there and the recruiting?
We probably should have put two and two together because he coached at Akron. I mean, he's an Ohio kid. He's John Carroll, all that, and all this from Ohio. So probably egg on our face for that.
All right. Yeah. Probably should have gone deeper there. This kid's going to have to be torn down and put back together again and see what you have there overall. Just the inconsistencies in his game. Certainly, you wouldn't think going to be a week one starter. Has the tools, Art talked about, can make all the throws and look, I mean, he's a big boy, right? And if anybody's played in AFC North, elements, I guess it would be him of the bunch as well too. So this is a lottery ticket, so to speak, in as far as mid-round quarterbacks go overall there. So it's just we're going to have to see how he goes through the Mike McCarthy process, and if they can make things simpler for these young quarterbacks. And he's definitely a developmental guy, so we'll see what Mike McCarthy's made of here with his quote unquote quarterback school.
Yeah, well, again, the quarterback school doesn't exist anymore in that old form, but McCarthy's still going to impart his wisdom and work with him the best that he can with all the time allotted to build up and find that consistency. So obviously, it was a really tough 2025 for Drew Allar that ended with that broken ankle. He's healthy now. He threw at the combine, so he made good rehab recovery. So that's all good. Should be good to go for rookie minicamp, I imagine. But even at the end of 2024, that playoff, I remember watching even the Boise State game where he threw 3 touchdowns. I don't think that was a good game. If memory serves, the Notre Dame game that followed was really poor, and so that's where the cracks I think started to show. So some will say the Penn State's offense didn't serve him well, and they didn't allow him to really maximize his talents, and some of that may be true. But if that's the case, why was the offense so scared of kind of running it to him, which might speak volumes about his own deficiencies and wanted to keep things simple for him. So, you guys know my thoughts just in general. The mid to late round quarterback, I'm never crazy about, with rare exception. I like taking Will Howard last year. I think these guys just tend to not work out. How does he get on the field? How does he fit? Does your quarterback have to get hurt for this guy to see time? It just usually isn't a good scenario. The success rate is low. There are, of course, exceptions, but generally, and in Pittsburgh has shown that with Mason Rudolph and Josh Dobbs and Omar Jacobs and guys like that, mid-round guys who just never really kind of found what they never became what Pittsburgh hoped they became. So I don't know exactly where that opportunity will come with Drew Allar. There's so much to go, so much he has to clean up to get there, to become a consistent, trusted quarterback at the NFL level. So this is not a pick that I endorse or support, but I understand the thought. I'm not surprised by it in the least, given what Pittsburgh is looking for. And some will say, we'll just take flyers on quarterbacks and take shots until you get one right. I understand the sentiment behind it, but I like to lead with more confidence rather than just, take a flyer, especially top of the third round. We're not talking even 6th or 7th round pick here. So it's hard for me to get behind this one. We'll see McCarthy and Arth can work their magic, but it will make for a very interesting training camp with Drew Allar and Will Howard and how those guys compete and perform.
Look, you got 2 young guys that should certainly push each other. There's that aspect of it. So going to be quite an interesting camp. Look, Drew Allar looks great coming off the bus, and I imagine after getting off the bus and getting dressed and in warm-ups, he looks every bit of the part. It's once the bullets start flying.
The 7-on-7, he looks aces.
Yeah, as most probably do there. So definitely a project quarterback here, and but the arm strength's there. A lot of the tools that you like there. It's just the consistencies, and once again, once the whistles start blowing and the clock starts ticking, that's where you start deducting the points with him.
Yeah, just when it comes to quarterback play, can we trust you? Can we trust you to make good decisions and take good care of the football and do the routine things routinely, to steal the Tomlin term? And I don't think Allar is particularly close to checking those boxes. Now, I will say in terms of upside, let me just ask you this very baited question, Dave. Who has the higher upside, Will Howard or Drew Allar?
I think Will Howard
I think it's
personally.
Aller. I think if you thought about if both hit their ceilings, Aller has the physical talent that
Okay.
Howard doesn't. Like Aller has a great arm. Howard's knock is the arm is just pretty average, and even though they're both big guys, Aller has a much better arm.
Well, look, if you took both of them off the bus once again and watched them warm up and all like that, which one are you probably taking? Aller, right?
I mean, well, they're
Uh,
similarly built. Like they look like the same guy. They're both
yeah,
big and with both 6'5" almost and 220, 30 plus pounds. Like they look like the same guy. But if you watch him through three deep balls, you would say, oh, Aller's the guy.
Oh yeah, look, if you watched if you watched the top 15 or 20 throws that plays from Aller over the last two seasons, you'll say, "Holy moly, that guy's got to be a top quarterback if that's all that you're watching there."
And then you watch the 15 worst plays, you say, oh, I kind of get it now why he's not a first round quarterback. I like Howard more than Aller coming out, but I'm just saying in terms of pure
Right.
upside in their best case scenario, I'm trying to make the case of why Aller could be the pick. So the question is now, how does the quarterback room shake out? Tom Marth confirming that selecting Aller has no impact on Aaron Rodgers. I know Charlie Batch went to the mat before the draft Friday and said if they take a quarterback in the third round, door shut on Aaron Rodgers. I don't believe that to be true in the least. So you usually carry three. You're going to probably carry three this year. Who becomes odd man out, Dave?
Obviously Mason Rudolph if Aaron Rodgers comes back, but here's the thing: is you don't have to make that decision right now. Unless somebody blows you away after the draft, right after the draft, that says, you know what, we didn't, obviously didn't get one of the top four quarterbacks in this draft to kind of develop, and we don't have a higher end backup quarterback currently on our roster here. I can't imagine that that's going to happen right after the draft where people are calling up Pittsburgh, clamoring to have Mason Rudolph for a fifth round pick or anything like that. So within that, I think you take those four guys into training camp, make sure all of them can get healthy, and then you get down to the final cut down day, and then you look around the league, how many backups or starters have gone down, who's the neediest at that time, and then you auction Mason Rudolph off to the highest bidder, once again, assuming that you've stayed healthy in your own quarterback room to that point.
And we've already heard one report from, it was Rappaport, I believe, right? That Pittsburgh is open to trading Mason Rudolph. The first time we've heard any official reporting about Pittsburgh being open to that. I don't think that's going to happen now. As you said, that's probably more of an August cut down things as teams lose quarterbacks, injuries happen, and teams want to evaluate their own guys right now. They want to see how their quarterbacks look throughout the spring and throughout training camp before they start looking to trade draft picks and acquire other talent. So I think Rudolph certainly looks like the guy who's going to get the squeeze because it's not going to be Aller. Obviously, Rodgers comes back and he's the guy. And I don't think it'll be Will Howard, just based on, potential and upside and what McCarthy has said about him and what he hasn't said about Mason Rudolph too. So the only thought is, does Mason sit there and say, I see this rating on the wall. I can tell I'm not going to make this team. Just cut me after the draft. Let me go find a new home sooner than later. I wonder if that conversation comes up, and if so, how Pittsburgh handles it. But failing that, then I think you carry them all and you look maybe to deal Rudolph for a late 2027 pick. There'll be a market for him come cut downs and go from there.
Yeah, you save a little bit of money there with the salary as well too, not a ton, but and then if you can anything that you get for him, and as far once again, you'll open it up to the highest bidder. Maybe you can get a 6th round draft pick for him. I don't know
Yeah.
next year, but that at least. But as I always like to say, these things
hmm
work themselves out through the wash as the later we get into the summer. So you get it's a lot of preseason ball and training camp ball. And we saw what happened to Will Howard last year that kind of interrupted things. So there's no once again, unless somebody just blows you away with an offer right after the draft happens, you just go and assuming, like you said, Mason Rudolph doesn't come out and said, "Look, I I see what's going on here. Get do me a solid and get me out of there. So anything other than that, they should carry. And once again, Aaron's not signed until Aaron's signed, but I would imagine they're going to keep all four all summer.
Yeah, and that's another reason to keep Rudolph until Rodgers officially signs. And if somebody goes down in training camp, then you want to be able to protect yourself. Now, it'll be interesting if Rudolph does, get shoved out of here at some point in the depth chart. In 26 is Rodgers and Howard and Allar. That's a young group behind your 42-year-old quarterback. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy there. So we'll see, but it's going to be a big summer for all those guys.
Look, those three, Aaron Rodgers could take all three of them boys out with him wherever he goes, and not have to probably worry about protection, because they're all pretty well put together kids there. So, look, I'll end the conversation the way I kind of started it there. If you were forcing me to pick one of the four quarterbacks, and I had to, that the Steelers would draft this year, I would have taken Aller here.
Are you happy in the third round? Do you wish it was? I mean, I'm sure you wish it was later, but how do you think the value sits at all or at 76?
I would have seen if I could probably take him with 99 or whatever it was. I would feel better about it that way, I think.
That was my instinct too, but I guess ultimately it's splitting hairs. Whether that's 76, 99, not a ton of a daylight there in the third round. I think with having 3 third-round picks, Pittsburgh felt like they could take, I don't want to say a luxury, but they could take a position that may not help you right away, Drew Allar, when you have 2 other picks that you were going to take there in the third round of other guys that could help you right away.
All right.
All right, Dave, let's talk about pick number 85. Pittsburgh sticking and picking and taking Georgia cornerback Daylen Everette. So Pittsburgh getting another well-built corner, not quite the freaky, long, big corner that, Porter and Jamel Dean are, but Everett has good size, just about 6'1.5", almost 200 pounds, and ran well at the NFL Combine of 4.38. One guy that I want to dig into more, I didn't write the report on him and haven't watched a ton of tape, but a guy that has big time pedigree. Pittsburgh talked about that. They had a pro day dinner with him. They went to that Georgia pro day, and Patrick Graham noted that they had a good conversation with Everett, like his approach mentality to the game. What I think is most interesting about Daylen Everette from a resume standpoint, he's still 21 years old, doesn't turn 22 until July, and has played 2,500 snaps in his career. And so to do that at a Georgia program that has all these 5 stars and the top talent in college football, to be trusted since you were, 18, 19 years old, to play right away, play in big-time spots, says a lot about what that program thought of him. Doesn't guarantee NFL success, obviously, but I think that certainly was appealing to Pittsburgh.
I feel seen because should have seen this one coming. Really, if you think about it, Ike Taylor was at the Georgia Pro Day, as were Mike McCarthy. Who all was at the Georgia Pro Day?
Graham,
Omar.
McCarthy, Kahn, yeah.
Yeah, and didn't Ike Taylor?
I don't know if Ike was there. He was at Alabama. I'd have to check if he was at Georgia too. I'm not sure.
Okay, I can't. Maybe I'm getting the two confused there, but there were some breadcrumbs there, obviously, to chew on. And when you look at the measurables, obviously what the Steelers look for in these corners, and they do kind of like them on the young side as well too. And there were a lot of breadcrumbs there. Now, as far as what they're getting in the kid, at least I had to look. You're able to play corner for as many snaps that he's played at the University of Georgia. That says a lot there. Now, as far as the actual tape goes with him, I think there was was it almost 20 snaps in the slot, and you look at the tape and you don't get the sense that this is a guy that's going to be kicking inside. I think he's going to be a boundary guy. He's got experience playing zone, press, off man, so he's done it all there. The time speed to me does not translate to on the field. What did he run? 4.48,
I think 4.38, I believe, was his 40.
4.38. Yeah, to me, you don't see that on the film with him. His processing to, I guess, see to do, seems delayed. Now, he did make a couple of very, challenging interceptions, I think, at Georgia. They're good ball recognition when the ball's up in the air, able to come off the corner. I think a guy that you're probably not going to be scared of blitzing, especially maybe some inside. I think he is look. The Steelers like these corners that are not afraid to tackle and are willing to get physical. I think he needs work, obviously, in the tackling area. I see a couple instances where he goes up high on some guys instead of going lower and kind of form. I think he's missed a few tackles, but at least he is willing in that area. There. And then once again, some of the pattern matching and stuff, the more complicated stuff that Georgia does, he was able to do that. Once again, not a lot of slot snaps overall, but does at least can rotate within there in some uh, uh, pre-snap kind of alignments and all. But he is going to be an outside corner. Is going to be yet another guy in this class is going to take some developing. Long, it's got traits, but I think he's going to start off. I think he'll be a special teams player right out of shoot, maybe a gunner on top of it there. So this is one of those height, weight, speed, experience, youth type players that hopefully you can develop into being an outside cornerback, possibly maybe even as soon as 2027.
Yeah, you're looking for some traits in man coverage, guys with size and overall athleticism. I think Everett has that from a profile. I'll read off the conclusion of our scouting report. And who wrote the report? That was Ross that wrote the report on Daylen Everett. He says, quote, Everett has the body and athleticism to develop into a strong starting corner, but there are some glaring issues that will be exploited by receivers at the next level. His back pedal is smooth, but he needs to trust it more to avoid situations where he opens his hips too early. Like most physical corners, he will need to become less grabby to avoid penalties at the next level. Otherwise, he has the speed to carry receivers deep and the hips to mirror breaking routes across the field. He has a better history in man, but there is evidence of him working in a zone system with improving eye discipline and comped him to James Bradbury, although admitted that was kind of a high-end comp for Daylen Everette. So I've heard mixed about his man and zone. Some have said he's a better zone corner than man corner. We'll have to see, where that fits into Pittsburgh, how much man and zone they run. Probably a little more man than zone this year under Patrick Graham. But there's some traits and tools to work with, and so that's the exciting part about him.
All right, I would agree there.
And in terms of where he fits, outside corner, as you said, a backup, likely to begin his career, but you need good cornerback depth. We assumed Pittsburgh was going to take a cornerback sooner than later. They had a lot of pre-draft interest in the position. We thought it might be Malik Muhammad who came in for a visit. They choose Everett instead. And Jamel Dean has never played a full NFL season, Dave. He's always had these minor injuries that cost him a couple of games here, a couple of games there. And so you need to have good depth. Of course, you did re-sign Asante Samuel Jr., but you want to be really strong at corner just in general. You see Cleveland now loading up on receivers. You're facing Chase and Higgins twice a year. You want to be just really good at the position. So I think Pittsburgh wanted to be deep at cornerback.
You're right. And, we set out to shoot, well, maybe corner's going to end up going a little bit higher than what we thought maybe originally, even on the heels potentially. I mean, after signing Dean and because, look, the last couple of swings that they've taken at corner, not outside of Joey Porter Jr. have been these late seventh round guys in Kent and Corey Trice Jr. and both those guys are obviously on notice this year. So you had to start adding back to that room. So why not add a younger guy with a lot of experience with the traits and the things that you look for? Seems to be a great kid as well too, right? From I haven't sat and watched multiple interviews with him, but seems to be a level-headed kid. And obviously comes out of a prime SEC program, battle tested and all in the SEC, being a Georgia product, and to stick and play the amount of snaps that he's played with a high profile program like Georgia. I think that speaks a lot, especially that they're able to trust him in his early days, and the fact that he's played the amount of snaps that he's played with them. So you throw him into the mix here, and once again, I expect him to be a special teams guy out of the chute as they try to work to develop him, and we'll see what 2020. I wouldn't expect he's probably going to play a lot of snaps this year unless injuries happen, but you never know as far as that goes. But I definitely, I mean, this is a guy that's obviously going to be on the 53-man roster. Uh, to me, probably a good gunner and jammer candidate, so he'll be able to put a helmet, at least get a game day helmet, potentially, and help you out on special teams as they try to groom him.
Yeah, that's well said. I think he'll take that gunner role, and with that speed, straight line, and the physicality there, and playing quarterback, playing defense, a good candidate for that. Couple other final stats on Daylen Everette: 150 career total tackles, 19 pass breakups, 5 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 1 scoop and score touchdown last year. 50 tackles, 10 breakups, 1 pick, and 1 fumble recovery for a touchdown. 41 career starts. He was third team All SEC the last 2 years. Missed tackle rate a little bit high, around 13% on him, and 10 career penalties against Daylen Everette. So, again, I think the overall resume, the body of work, him being 21 with all the experience at a big time pro type defense, the Kirby Smart and company runs down there is attractive. They met with him at the pro day dinner, so we can confirm that to get to know the person, which I'm sure made them feel a lot more comfortable about Daylen Everette. So, is it the most exciting pick? Is this guy to become the next great corner? Probably not, but I certainly see where Pittsburgh's head was at.
I think University of Texas is glad to see him gone. Didn't he have a pretty good showing in that tape against Texas there? But yeah, and once again, you look at this class overall when it comes to this cornerback group. How many high-end players are really in it, and we had an idea of this team closer we got to draft day that the Steelers were probably going to take potentially a day 2 shot on a corner. So he matches what they look for.
No question. All right, Dave, with the final selection in day number 2 and round number 3, excuse me. Pittsburgh trading up a couple of spots from 99 to 96 to get Jennings Dunker, the offensive lineman out of Iowa. Pittsburgh flipping a 6th-round pick to do so. That was a deal with the Seattle Seahawks, and so feels like the quintessential Steeler. I know everyone will talk about the mullet and hay bale tosses and all that kind of stuff, but this is a rugged run blocker, going to kick inside to guard, confirmed by James Campen. Didn't rule out, playing tackle still at some point down the road, but guard is where he will begin. And so this is a guy that certainly feels like a Steeler, wears Steelers colors, those Iowa uniforms. And so Pittsburgh moving up to make sure they got him.
All right, you had him in your mock draft, but had him higher, right?
It's the classic Alex move of putting a guy too early in the mock, getting it right, but a round or two too early. So yeah, I had him in the 2nd round, which did feel too early, but I was struggling to find a guard to put in there, and so I'll give myself half credit for that.
You get credit for him. It's hard enough to get 1 or 2 right in mock draft. So regardless of where the round goes, so props to you on that. I gave him less consideration because of a lot of things that we talked about Dunker, coming out of the chute there. I think at the Senior Bowl here, this is a guy that primarily played right tackle at Iowa. He does have limited guard experience at both spots, but I think you got to go back to 2022 for that to be on tape there. A guy that I think we both agreed because of the arm length and the ability to play on the edge like that was going to have to kick inside. Not surprised one bit that James Campen said, going to start off at guard first. And as far as sides go, we'll see on that. Obviously, have Mason, you're stacked, obviously with the tackle that you took in the 1st round and Fautano, and then Mason McCormick, and then the position flexibility of Brock Hoffman. You seem like you're pretty well set on the right side initially there. So where is this guy going to slot in initially? one of the guard spots. We'll see if they now Dunker did say and did hit on the fact that he has played both guard spots, but it's been a while ago. I think his freshman year, he has been repping or working on kind of, I guess, guard skills and all like that, going into the pre-draft process. I love me some guards. I love me. He is a football player type of guy. He looks every bit of the part. We talked at some point during one of the podcasts if that they ended up drafting this guy, he's going to be a cult hero of sorts in Pittsburgh. I expect that to be the case here. I don't know how the rest of the picks go throughout the they got 5 scheduled for day 3 here. I'm going to unequivocally say, and this is even getting the Germie Bernard pick right in my mock draft. Now I'm mocked because of the way I think the Steelers will do. This is Dunker's going to be my favorite selection of the 2026 Steelers draft class because I think there are pretty good prospects of him moving inside at guard, and with the right coaching in Campen and Jahari Evans, I think he's got a shot of being a long-term guard option for this team overall there. So I think he moves great as far as what you might ask him to do in pulling and things of that nature. Obviously, don't want to see him have to play tackle, but and once again, I didn't put him in my mock because of the whole side thing and mostly playing at tackle and then having to shift guys, positionally and all like that. But if there's any offensive tackle in this class that was an easy pre-draft kind of speculation, kick inside type of guy, I think Dunker's it. And James Campen talked about how well coached the Iowa offensive linemen are. I think you had some sort of post selection note about Mike McCarthy's affinity for Iowa offensive linemen. What, 5?
Yeah, not offensive lineman, just Iowa players. This is the 7th Iowa Hawkeye he's drafted, and now I believe the 4th trench player, offensive lineman or defensive lineman. I mentioned, I think I talked about some in our mock draft before the actual draft kicked off, was Brian Bulaga, Iowa Hawkeye, 1st-round pick, and I'm sure Mike McCarthy remembers that. Mike Daniels, defensive lineman, great Iowa Hawkeye, and so some of that. Could you say that's coincidence because he's been in the league for a long time? McCarthy has. You could, but I think there's a commonality, a trait there. They like those Iowa guys that are big, strong, tough, physical, well coached. The things that James Campen talked about. So to me, this is not just correlation of just Iowa guys. There's a reason for that. They like those guys that like their makeup, and obviously we're seeing that here with Jennings Dunker.
Man, you look at his tape; he's on top of a lot of other guys.
It's kind of McCormick. Like him and McCormick kind of have the same style. I think the Dunker might be a little bit nastier.
Oh,
But
he is.
Same
Yeah.
overall mentality.
Yeah. I think he's nastier than McCormick is, and you definitely the pancakes are on the film.
And Pittsburgh needs that. They really needed that real butt kicking type of dude. Frazier can be that guy, but I think Dunker can even add more on top of that.
Yeah, you wind him up and you just point him in the right direction and turn him loose. So it's going to be. I think the big question with him is it left or right guard? So should have an opportunity, I think, to potentially compete for that left guard spot.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a long conversation. I'm sure we'll continue to have it about how all the pieces are going to fit. The good thing is, as you said, that Dunker, he knew he was going to have to kick inside to guard at the NFL level. That was the projection. That was the feedback he was getting. So he's been working probably, as he said, both guard spots and getting reps there. He does have some background doing that in that 2022 season. And so there is at least a little bit of something there. It's not quite Kevin Dotson, who was just on one side. Even McCormick was just a one-side guy at South Dakota State, and he had to make that transition, and fortunately has done a good job at it. Now, you could sit there and say, well, maybe they move Fautanu to left tackle, then they decide to move McCormick to left guard to keep those guys together, put them in their college spots, and then put Dunker at right guard. Like, you could have so many different combinations and permeations of this offensive line that it's really not worth probably getting into all of that right now. I think it just makes I'm always about simplicity when it comes to offensive line in terms of moving guys around. Less is more, so just move Dunker to left guard as opposed to flipping everybody. And then, of course, you put Dunker at right guard and Johanna Choice at right tackle, and you got 2 rookies there. That's not really ideal. So who the heck knows? I don't think they're getting too bogged down. And this guy's playing this spot, and we project this guy to play this spot. Dunker's going to be a guard with some tackle flexibility if he has to do it, if injury strikes. So that gives you some options there. But I think Pittsburgh will go into camp, see how these guys look, develop, and injuries impact things, and kind of take it from there.
Here's one thing. We can officially now stop the Fautanu to guard talk now.
I hope so, and thank God, because if Pittsburgh ever moved Fautanu to guard, that would be such an irresponsible decision to take a really good tackle and put him inside of the less premium position. So, to me, again, I put Dunker at left guard, let him, Hoffman, and Anderson compete for that starting spot.
I do as well.
Competition, rise to the top, best man win. That makes a lot of sense. You're going to have depth and versatility with anyone who doesn't get that starting job. That's what I would personally do. We'll see what Pittsburgh does and how they handle it. I'm sure Dunker will probably see maybe time at both spots in camp and kind of just get some flexibility going there. But my approach would be just keep it simple, Dunker to left guard, and take it from there.
I agree. He looks like a guard for Aaron Rodgers. If that makes any
Looks
sense.
like a bodyguard for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. So this guy's gonna when this guy and his mullet show up at training camp, he's gonna be a cult hero. On top of it, I like him. I think he's gonna be my favorite player out of this draft class.
Now, what are the concerns? Athleticism or lack thereof is the big concern. There's a reason why he was easily projected to go from tackle to guard. It wasn't from a lack of size. He's 6'5", 320. The length is, 33 plus inch arms. So it wasn't, like he's screaming profile, oh, this guy has to kick inside. But the athleticism really isn't there. The lateral agility, can he handle those quicker defensive tackles? Can he handle, zone blocking schemes and reaching and cutting guys off? That's going to be the real X factor for Jennings Dunker. Is he athletic enough, even along the interior, to handle some of those more difficult blocks? If he can do that, then you got something really there with Dunker, but that's going to be the key.
Right. He belongs in a phone booth, period. You send him in the phone booth and see who comes out of there.
How much did he pull? I'm guessing he didn't pull much at tackle at Iowa.
I think there is some of that him coming across from the tackle position there on some counter stuff and all like that. So I've seen some of it on tape. Overall there. Now, how many times they did it all? Well, look, we've got a lot of time between now and the start of training camp, and we're obviously going to go way deeper. And, once we do more initial film rooms on these guys, we're going to get into more specific things about, okay, this is how he did in pass protection. Although, once again, most of his college tape when it comes to Dunker is going to be stuff at the tackle position. So you're going to have to use your imagination with how, that might look inside there. But I think we'll be able to look at, we'll probably have a post at some point dedicated to him on the hoof and moving and pulling there. So, I think he belongs in the phone booth. And I think, like you said, him, Hoffman, and Spencer Anderson, I think you let them battle it out for that left guard spot. Not a bad group to have to battle. No. I think top to bottom, when it we've seen Hoffman do some good things at the guard spots there, and McCormick obviously entrenched right now, but like you said too, and we brought up a few times. I mean, you look at a guy like McCormick; he was predominantly a left guard at South Dakota State there. So but I do respect what you said. Do you want 2 young kids on the right side? It makes sense right now for Dunker to start initially at left guard and get in that mix over there.
Same, but I think Pittsburgh will take him to camp, probably move these guys around a little bit, try them at different spots, and see where guys fit and go from there. From a value standpoint, from where this guy was expected to be drafted versus where he was drafted, I think Jennings Dunker easily the best value selection Pittsburgh has made thus far. I think Johanna Chor is basically about expectation, Bernard about expectation, Allar maybe a little bit earlier than people thought, Everett probably about where he was expected to go. Dunker was thought maybe even a second round kind of a guy. So to get him into the third, one of the final picks of the third round, just from that standpoint, is great value on Jennings Dunker.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, Dave. So those are the selections. Pittsburgh has 5 selections currently today at 121, 161, and 3 7th-round picks, 224, 230, and 249. So we'll see if they stick, if they make any other trades. They're at 10 picks right now. We've had this big debate, 9 or 10 selections, and we're right on that borderline. We're at 10 right now if they make those final 5. So could they trade up? Ross McCorkle pointed out a 63 pick gap from 161 to 224. You'd love to fill it, but I don't know how far a couple of 7th-round picks are going to get you to move up the board. I remember Pittsburgh had a long wait. I think 2 years ago they had like a long 80-pick wait or so. So maybe they wait it out again. Maybe they make a trade up or down. We shall see.
All right, where'd all the tight ends go?
They all went yesterday, man. Big run on tight end. So let's talk about day 3 where Pittsburgh could go. You expect they're going to draft a tight end. They still need a tight end, but the list is certainly thinning out. One name who makes a lot of sense, though, Dave came in for a visit. Local kid, Khalil Dinkins, could be a 7th-round pick out of Penn State.
Yeah, I think the list probably starts there. I think you continue on that list potentially with the kind of a fullback type, and Nowakowski out of Indiana would be an interesting day 3 ad there. But man, all of our guys are gone right now. So I will. Will we see that position in early in round 4? Probably not. I would think now at this point, you get that tight end type, and they don't have a 4th right now, correct?
No, they have a 4th. They're at
Oh,
121. They
wait,
traded 135, but they already had
they
that was
don't
their
have
other
the
4th round
6th.
pick.
They
They
don't
don't
have
have the
the
6th.
6th.
That was
Okay.
part of the Dunker trade.
All right, so I think maybe we could get into the talk here 5th round, but that might be a little bit rich, although here we are saying where did all the tight ends go?
Mhm.
So I think they will. I think that's one position they will address. I think guys like Nowakowski, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about Cuevas out of Alabama. Royer's a pretty decent blocker, right? Pretty decent sized kid. Uh,
I mentioned Daquan Wright from Ole Miss. I
right.
liked on tape. Bauer Sharp from LSU's got some size. I think those are some other names to think about. I like
Yeah.
Tanner Kozio from Houston. I don't know if the blocking's going to be there for Pittsburgh's liking, but one other name to mention.
All right. So I think we both, in other words, we both expect a tight end. I think at
Mhm.
some point here. Where else could they go? You got my boy Genesis Smith still on the board, I believe, right? If they wanted to get a kind of a free safety type, I think Zachy Wheatley is a guy that you've mocked
Mhm.
in the past. That could be an option there. I would figure that some of these guys are going to start coming off the board here pretty soon, though, when it comes to a safety. So maybe that's, and look at all the here's the thing. Not that you should bank on where they've gone positionally so far, but you've only drafted one defensive guy at this point and a lot of offensive guys. So I think you might see them
Yeah.
turn their attention to a defensive guy potentially with these next 2 picks here. So if you're gonna go safety, I got my fingers crossed that it might be Genesis Smith. You maybe are going to go a different direction with Zachy Wheatley, but some interesting in what is a deep safety class. Still, I think there's some talent to be had there. So I would expect them to go that route. A couple of the defensive tackles that we've talked about throughout this process. Darrell Jackson Jr. out of Florida State is still on the board. If they wanted to go that way, my boy James Thompson Jr., I would expect him to probably be more of a 7th-round pick. Though, if they wanted to wait, I like the chances of one of those 2 guys becoming a Steeler today, Darrell Jackson Jr. or James Thompson Jr. there. So I think that's potentially a way we could see them go. Obviously, will they or won't they a punter? And then I guess the other position we should probably talk about is the off the ball linebacker spot. You got guys like Harold Perkins Jr. Oh Lord,
Your
Jack
guy, Jack
Kelly.
Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Kelly, I think's in the mix there. If you wait until round 7, you got guys like Red Murdoch that could potentially mix in. Jaden Duggar, who I think you did mock, right?
I did, yeah. You got Kyle Lewis. Could he be a fourth-round
Right.
guy? A little surprised he's still on the board, but I think trying to figure out, is he
Right.
linebacker, safety, the concern there with him. Yeah, inside, up linebacker still has plenty of talent out there, Dave.
Right. I think we talked about edge being more of a luxury in this class, but if you got into the, say, they don't have a 6th-round pick, but if maybe early 7th on a guy like even Logan Fano or Mason Ryder out of Wisconsin still on the board there. I think if they went that way, it would potentially be one of those two guys. I think you can get a guy like, here's one guy to maybe watch as far as an undrafted free agent, Aiden Hubbard out of Northwestern. I think if they wanted to not draft an edge but get one undrafted there.
I'd also mention a couple of Big Ten pass rushers: Caden Curry, Ohio State, red hot motor; Jack Sawyer-like, and Max Llewellyn, another Iowa kid.
Okay. I don't think we're going to see another corner unless it's more slot related come off the board. I would expect if it's a safety, it would probably be more free safety-ish type. The whole Kyle Lewis conversation does get interesting as early as this round, right? 4th round.
Yep. He's probably to be taken in the 4th round.
And then we'll see with the whole punter thing if they have a pick left over for there, and then a possible return guy. We have, I think, both you and I tell you somebody that's interesting. That's still, there's 2 on the board right now that it would not hurt my feelings if either one of these kids were on the board in the 4th round to go that direction. They're both big kids: Elijah Surratt, Bryce Lance. And they brought
Now,
Jeff.
is that for a returner or is that just for receiver?
No, I'm talking about receiver. I mean,
Okay.
if you want to add to that room,
Yeah.
if your board is stacked in a way that you know what, grade wise and all like that, nobody's jumping off the board at this point. You got into this 4th round pick, and either Elijah Surratt or Bryce Lance are staring you in the face. I don't think those would be bad. Either one of those would be bad selections. And then you brought Jeff Caldwell in. He's probably not he's probably more of a 7th round guy, if we're being honest there. You talked about Kendrick Law as a potential late round guy, I believe. So that's an option there. The kid out of Houston that I put in my mock draft late there, return capable type.
Lacey, Colin Lacey?
Yeah,
From Louisville.
Oh, Louisville. I got the red wrong. Louisville. He's still on the board, although he might, the way this class is going, he might end up being an undrafted free agent there. But and once again, I don't want to sit here. I don't want to name off 50 guys because then it becomes a shooting fish in the barrel type situation. I think we've named quite a few guys there. What do we name? About 20 guys once again?
Yeah, we named a lot. I'll add to it a couple more. Just names on my list up on the site right now. If you want the returners, Caden Weejan in Iowa, I'm banging the table for that. For 5th round, really, I think would make a lot of sense for Weejan. Berrien Brown at LSU, stellar kick returner. Not really a punt guy, but kick returner all day long. What about running back? Could there be a running back? I know it's not a big need, but I put on Eli Heidenreich, Pittsburgh kid, versatile runner, receiver at Navy, obviously character out of this world. I think that'd be interesting. They like versatility. They want high character guys. Could that be a possibility? Desmond Reed out of Pitt. That feels a little more UDFA, 7th round. Defensive line, Rashawn Benny out of Michigan. I think it could also fit what Pittsburgh is looking for. And anything else? The punter, just to mention the punters' names: Brett Thorson from Georgia, Ryan Eckley, Michigan State, Tommy Doman Jr., Florida. Watch out for Baltimore taking Tommy Doman Jr. Jesse Minter coached him at Minnesota, Michigan, and Syracuse's Jack Stonehouse. And then I also just got to ask Dave, where's Jamad McCoy going to go? I mean, this is a crazy situation here. 1st round talent.
Oh boy, did you see what Charles Robinson said about that?
Yeah, the potential
Lord.
Career ending if this next surgery to repair that bone plug doesn't stick, that this might be it for McCoy. Obviously, that's a big reason why he's fallen, and it just sucks for him so much. But the medical, obviously, major red flags there. You wonder, where's this guy going to go? Day 3, you start feeling okay, a little more comfortable to assume this risk. If it doesn't work out, then it's not like we're to top 100 pick. So you'd think his name's going to be called here soon, but that medical law is obviously scaring the heck out of these teams.
Did you read the Charles Robinson or watch the interview?
I watched the interview.
Oh, I did too. I don't. It's weird that both of us. I watched it late last night too. I don't know how I stumbled across that. It's weird that we both ended up on that thing. I was going to ask you about it at some point today. Oh, that's scary. That is, and. What got me is the 4 panelists that he was talking to.
They're like laughing.
I
like, why
know.
Are you laughing?
It
was like a cringe laughing.
Yeah, it was a cringe. Yeah, they weren't laughing at him, but it was kind of. Yeah, it. I guess that's all you can do is kind of laugh. But oh man, if any of you listening, we need to try to tweet that out so that they'll know what to look for in the feeds and all. But if you get time, go watch what Charles Robinson had to say about that poor kid, a talented kid, but. Oh man, I didn't realize all that was going on with him.
Yeah, Pelissero reported pre-draft about the bone plug, but didn't really give a lot of detail on that. So the issue is not the ACL that he tore in 25. Right. It's although I'm not sure if that was part of the ACL construction. I don't know all the details on that, but obviously big medical concerns with Jermod McCoy. But I mean, at some point the value just get too good.
If the Steelers draft him, Dr. Mel's going to be busy.
Yes, billable hours on that. But eventually the value is going to be so good. We'll say that he's worth the risk in the 5th round, where if you only get 4 years out of him, or you get 3 years in and he busts up his knee again, then fine. But yeah, it sucks for him.
All right, let's end it with this. This team currently has 5 picks remaining. Let's assume that they make 5 picks and 5 picks only. What will the positions be? Tight end? Defensive line, safety, off the ball linebacker.
Okay, and I'll say a specialist, either punter or returner.
Okay, I will agree. I think that's the way it feels like it's going to shake out at this point. So it very well could be 10 picks, and you will have won that if that's the case there. I'm rooting for them to trade up and go get a guy that they want. And then.
But what ammunition do you have to trade?
Yeah,
you can't trade next year's capital. One last question for you, Dave. We gotta get out of here and get this thing posted. Call your shot and name one player Pittsburgh drafts today.
James Thompson Jr.
In round 7?
Yeah.
All right. I'll say Jayden Dunker, round 5. My guess on him. And I will say Max Tomczak, your Steelers UDFA.
Okay. Yeah, I think I said pre-draft that there's one guy on my list that I think this team's going to draft. I think it's James Thompson Jr. and it'd be a late round. It would be super nice if you don't have to address that and can get him in the as an undrafted free agent. But I got a feeling that, and look, this defensive line class isn't great. And what you're going to see happen is where guys fit of what you look for, in schematic and build and all like that. So you're gonna probably see some guy go earlier or a guy go later because of not a great bottom of the class, and then B, kind of the fits and all like that. But I'll stick with my James Thompson Jr.
And day 3 is always, the board widens up. Each team's board gets even more varied, and, forget about projections and values where guys were expected to go, especially in kind of a weaker class. So it's always a grab bag with these final 100 or so selections.
Who's your second confidence? If there is such a thing for day 3.
Khalil Dinkins.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a cheat at this point.
I just wonder which round, because you would think 7th, but with a tight end run, the way it's been running, and Dinkins can block a little bit, play in line, which is what's attracting teams to all these day 2 guys, Kasmerick, Roush, etc. So I wonder round 5 for Dinkins.
All right. Yeah, you done twist my arm there. I'll go with that.
All right, Dave, let's get out of here. Let's get this thing posted, and we'll, of course, be back tomorrow to recap the final selections, UDFAs, McCarthy comments, etc., etc.
All right, and I think we're doing things to know about post, and obviously Tom Mead is having his post draft value post, and I think Josh Carney's going to do an AFC North wrap up, and obviously we'll have the write ups, the profiles on the players bumped up to the top as soon as these players are taken here. So it's going to be an exciting day for us again at Steelers Depot, and hopefully a lot of people swing by the site and say hello and check out what all we have going on. And Alex and I'll be back in about 24 hours to recap up the entire draft. So you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot, follow Alex at Alex_Kozora, follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Let's see. If you want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. And we'll be back soon enough here. So as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.